The warehouse was never supposed to be alive again. But that night, the police thought the case was over. They thought the killer had vanished into the dark, leaving behind only a broken family and a city full of fear. Officers were gathering evidence, bagging every piece of proof they could find. The crime scene tape glowed under red and blue lights. It was supposed to be routine cleanup. That was when it happened. From the doorway of the warehouse, a shadow appeared. A tall figure, face hidden in the dark. For a moment, no one breathed. Then the figure stepped forward, and the officers saw the knife glinting in his hand. Gasps erupted. Guns were drawn. Flashlights cut across the room. Detective Alan Hayes shouted, "Drop the weapon." "Hands where I can see them." But the man didn't move. He tilted his head, slowly, almost mockingly, as if laughing at them without sound. His presence alone was enough to freeze every officer where they stood. This wasn't supposed to happen. The killer had returned to the scene of the crime. Before anyone could react, he bolted deeper into the warehouse, disappearing into the maze of crates and shadows. The officers lunged after him, boots pounding on the dusty floor. Every corner seemed to stretch further into darkness. Every echo sounded like it was coming from everywhere at once. They chased him past broken machines and shattered glass, but the shadows always swallowed him back up. Then came the sound, something far worse than silence. A laugh, low, hollow. It rolled across the warehouse walls like a ghost, circling them. It wasn't desperate or nervous. It was steady, amused. The kind of laugh that told them they weren't in control. The chase had only begun, and already, fear had taken root. But hours earlier, no one expected this nightmare. That morning, the town of Fairhaven had woken up to what felt like an ordinary day. Children walked to school. Coffee shops filled with chatter. Life went on. Nobody knew that inside the old, abandoned warehouse on Ashland Road, a young woman named Rachel Miller lay dead. Rachel had been missing for 3 days. Flyers with her smile had been taped to every grocery store door and streetlight in town. Her parents had begged for her safe return. But the truth was far crueler. Her body was discovered by 2 teenagers who had snuck into the warehouse on a dare. They screamed and ran when they found her, but the sound of their terror brought neighbors and police rushing in. Rachel was found lying in the center of the floor, surrounded by flowers. White lilies, arranged carefully around her as if someone had staged the scene. On her chest was a folded piece of paper. For words written in bold black marker, "I will come back." The message shook even the toughest officers. Sheriff Daniel Morgan, a man with 30 years of law enforcement behind him, had stood there silently, jaw tight, eyes narrowed at the note. He didn't need to say it out loud. Everyone felt it. This wasn't just a murder. It was a performance. Detective Hayes, younger but sharp and unshakable, had tried to piece together the scene. Rachel had no purse, no phone, no sign of struggle. The killer had taken what he wanted and left behind only a message. A warning. The town buzzed with fear by afternoon. Parents pulled children from the streets. Doors were locked early. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said it was a stranger passing through, others swore it was someone local, someone they all knew. By evening, the warehouse was crawling with officers, evidence teams, and flashing lights. Hayes moved carefully through the scene, directing his men, studying every corner. The more he looked, the more he felt the killer hadn't just left a warning. He had left a promise. That was when it happened. While the officers cataloged the crime scene, while Sheriff Morgan stepped outside to calm the press, the shadow in the doorway appeared. The killer had returned to the scene of the crime, and this time, he wasn't hiding. Flashlights snapped up. Guns raised. Commands were shouted, but he only tilted his head, smiling faintly in the dark. Then, in one swift move, he darted back into the warehouse. The officers chased him, shouting, the beams of light slicing through dust and gloom, and then, as if the warehouse itself had betrayed them, the sound of the doors locking echoed across the walls. The killer wasn't running, that he was trapping them. The officers froze, the sound of chains rattling through the building. Detective Hayes felt his stomach twist. This wasn't a chase anymore, this was a hunt, and they were the prey. The sound of the warehouse doors locking echoed like a death sentence. The heavy metal clanged shut, rattling the chains that now sealed everyone inside. For a brief moment, silence hung over the officers, thick and suffocating. Detective Alan Hayes scanned the darkness, his hand gripping his flashlight so tightly his knuckles turned white. "He's not running," Hayes muttered under his breath. "He's keeping us here." Sheriff Daniel Morgan barked orders, "Fan out. Watch every corner. Don't let him out of your sight." But sight was the problem. The warehouse stretched endlessly in shadows. Stacks of rusted crates towered like walls. Broken windows high above leaked only slivers of moonlight. Every sound carried forever. Every creak and whisper seemed close, even when it wasn't, and then came the laugh again that it echoed from the rafters, bouncing across metal and wood. Low. Hollow. Almost playful. The kind of laugh that told them this wasn't panic or desperation. "This was entertainment," Officer Brooks whispered, "he's toying with us." They moved carefully, flashlights cutting beams through the dust. One officer tripped over a loose chain, the loud clang making everyone flinch. The laugh grew louder, closer. Hayes raised his voice, steady but tense. "You're trapped in here with us. It's over. Drop the act." The response came not in words, but in a sound that froze their blood. A chair scraping across the floor, slow. Deliberate. Somewhere deeper in the warehouse, the officers moved in formation, following the noise. Their beams of light landed on something chilling. A small table. 2 chairs. And in one chair sat a mannequin, dressed in an old suit, its painted smile glowing pale under the flashlight. In front of it was a plate of steaming food. Fresh. The steam curled up into the cold air. Brooks gagged. "This isn't possible. Nobody's been here long enough to..." Before he could finish, another sound filled the air. Footsteps, heavy, slow. Behind them, they whipped around, lights flashing across crates, machines, shadows. Nothing. Then the footsteps came again, this time from the opposite side. Hayes' heart pounded. The killer was moving through the warehouse like a ghost, using the darkness as his shield. Morgan's voice cut the air, sharp and controlled. "He's circling us. Stay together. Nobody splits up." But the killer had other plans. A sudden crash came from the far end of the warehouse, metal crates slamming down. Sparks flew as something metallic skidded across the floor. The sound was deafening, making every officer's nerves rattle. 2 officers sprinted toward the crash. Their lights hit only fallen boxes, nothing more, and that was when the real trap was sprung. The sound of boots pounding on the floor, fast, deliberate, raced directly toward Hayes. He spun his light just in time to see a flash of movement, a tall figure, dressed in black, rushing out of the shadows. The knife glinted in his hand. "Down!" Hayes shouted, throwing himself aside as the killer lunged. Gunshots cracked through the warehouse. Sparks burst from metal as bullets ricocheted off pipes and crates. The killer moved fast, too fast, darting back into the shadows as if swallowed whole. Hayes scrambled to his feet, chest heaving. "He's not running. He wants us scared. He wants us chasing him." And then, without warning, the overhead lights in the warehouse flickered. Once. Twice. Then, they went out. The entire warehouse fell into complete, suffocating blackness. The only light came from the officers' flashlights, narrow beams of trembling white in an ocean of dark. And in that silence, broken only by shallow breathing and creaking wood, came the voice, low, calm, chilling, "You shouldn't have come back." The officers froze, every light whipping around wildly, desperate to find the source, but the voice wasn't in one place. It was everywhere. The warehouse was now a coffin of shadows. The overhead lights had gone out completely, leaving only the thin beams of the officers' flashlights to push back the dark. Dust floated through the air like smoke. Every breath, every step, every heartbeat felt too loud. The voice still echoed. Calm. Cold. Everywhere at once. "You shouldn't have come back." Detective Hayes turned in a slow circle, flashlight darting across crates and rafters. His chest rose and fell fast, but his voice was steady. "He's close. Stay sharp." Sheriff Morgan stood like stone, his jaw tight. Form up. Nobody goes alone. But the killer didn't need them to split. He could split them himself. From somewhere above, a heavy chain rattled, swinging down from the rafters with a loud metallic clang. An officer jumped back, stumbling into a stack of crates. The crates shook, then toppled, crashing to the floor and throwing up clouds of dust. Flashlights whipped around, beams slicing the gloom, but there was no figure. No movement. Only the sound of boots, again, circling. Always circling, then a scream. High-pitched, sharp, from the far corner of the warehouse. One of the younger officers. His flashlight beam spun wildly before hitting the floor with a clatter. The team rushed toward the sound, weapons raised, but when their lights hit the corner, there was no officer. Only his flashlight, rolling in slow circles on the ground. Hayes shouted, "Jackson! Where are you?" No answer. The silence was heavier than the scream had been. Sheriff Morgan's face darkened. "He's taking us one by one." The officers tightened their circle, weapons raised outward. Sweat dripped down faces, breaths came fast. But then, as if mocking them, a second beam of light appeared in the distance. Jackson's flashlight. But this time, it wasn't rolling on the ground. It was standing upright. Balanced perfectly in the middle of the floor. Brooks whispered, That's not possible." They stared at it. None of them dared move. Then the beam tilted slowly, deliberately, like an unseen hand was bending it. The light stretched across the floor until it shone directly into their eyes. The killer was taunting them. Suddenly, another crash erupted, this time behind them. A loud metallic bang echoed as pipes hit the floor. The group spun, and in that split second of confusion, another officer vanished. This time, Hayes saw it. Just a flash. A shadow pulling a figure backward into the darkness between two crates. The officer's hand clawed at the air before disappearing completely. "No!" Hayes roared, charging forward. His flashlight beam darted between the crates, but they were empty. Only a smear of dust on the floor, sliding where boots had dragged. Morgan grabbed Hayes by the arm. "He wants you separated. Don't give him what he wants." But Hayes' voice shook with anger. "He's playing with us, Sheriff. He's right here, and we can't even touch him." The laugh came again, louder this time. Deeper. It rattled through the warehouse like the walls themselves were mocking them. Then the lights returned, not all of them. Just a few overhead lamps. But what they revealed made every officer freeze in place. There, in the center of the warehouse floor, sat the missing officer, Jackson. He was seated upright in a chair. His head hung low, his arms bound tight with rope. And around his neck, glinting in the pale light, was a thick chain connected to the ceiling rafters. The killer had staged him like a prop in his twisted game. Hayes whispered, "God, he's right here." Then Jackson's head lifted. Slowly. Painfully. His eyes met theirs, wide with terror. His mouth opened as if to speak, but before a sound came out, the chain snapped tight with a violent jerk. The officers shouted, "Are you?" Shing forward, and the warehouse lights cut out again, pitch black. Only Jackson's muffled cry echoed once through the dark, before it was swallowed completely.